Yes, okay. So, I'm Chief Technology Officer. I work mainly in the world of client side, in the mobile side. I work very closely with Selwyn and his team. I also work closely with people outside of the company in working with analysts and people like that. But I also build applications. One of the things that I do with Selwyn is that when there's new technologies coming in, I try building something with it that's real, and we learn from that so that we can run into a lot of the issues before you do. And better yet, I get to build it when it's hard to build it, and then Selwyn looks at what I do and says, oh, you spent 2 weeks doing that. I'll put a wizard in, I'll put a little genie in and a builder, and it happens in no time. And you're going to see some of that. And that's what happens. And that's when, by the time you actually get to do something, by then we have figured out how to, the essence of it. We've done many iterations. So I'm going to show you a few things, starting with where I come from. So let's stick this. This is an iPad. And I'm going to take the thing here and show you. Rather than mirror it, we're having problems with it. I'm just connecting the iPad directly. You know that there are adapters you can put on tablets and they come up. That one will eventually come up. It takes a while.
I think it's powered down.
Oh, it powered down. Ooh. It was up earlier. Well, so my background is that I've been programming for many years. I started programming back in, I think it was 67. And I programmed from Fortran to whatever. And in the last, I guess 20 years, it was MFC, C, what is it? C++ and MFC on Windows. Then I did Visual Basic for a while because I could prototype quickly, and then other people would write it in native Windows. Then I did Perl work, and then I did JavaScript work. A lot of JavaScript work client side. I did a whole spreadsheet client side called Social Calc that is really, would handle thousands of rows of data on a spreadsheet that was really fast on a 1 lap per child, which is the slowest machine you can imagine. It's like the VW microbus of processors. At that point, I realized that JavaScript was really going places and that HTML5 was really an important way of doing things. However, then the iPhone and iPad came in, and I became an iOS developer because the features that I wanted to do, the applications I wanted to do, as you'll see in a second, were only available at that time natively. And I started with iOS, and having been a C programmer, I could do that, learn Objective-C, and then on the iPad. I have an app on the iPad called Note-Taker HD. Now, can you see this? Note-Taker HD. Hold on a second. I have to tell it that it can run. Unzoom, retina display, external video settings. Okay. Now you can see it, right? One of the many options of the app. Sometimes people want the app to control the other screen. Sometimes people want to mirror it. This is an app for taking notes. So if I look at this and I draw with my finger, it does whatever I'm doing. But I can zoom in. Now when I zoom in, I have a little box and I can write stuff there, and it shows up. And I can zoom with my fingers. This is, I'm doing pinch. I can zoom with this. On an iPad 1, this runs fast, okay? It has a lot of other features. I can do shapes. I can pull in, let's see, a grid tool here. Let's tap on that. Let's pull in one of these, and I'll type something on it. Text goes here. And you can move the thing around, and you can zoom it in, you can zoom it out, etc. You can change the color. Let's change the color to something. I built all these controls myself, okay? I'm an iOS developer. This thing has Notice when I'm doing this that there are buttons that are coming in and out, okay? There are tools that can pop up and down. There's all sorts of stuff you can get to. If you want to get to the pen presets, you can get to the pen presets. If you want to get to data, there's all sorts of data. It has a system of folders, and in the folders there are all sorts of documents, and you can look at the documents. You can look at documents that have a background that is PDF, etc. You're getting the feel for the level of this application. Now, what was my challenge? The challenge with this is that you use it this way, and you also use it this way. Notice it's smoothly, but the layout is different. I have 2 dimensions, and I have to fill it and use it appropriately. I have context-sensitive help. I have full help. There's a real reason for that, as I'll explain in a minute. But I don't just have these 2 orientations. Something that some people need to do, I can't help it. There are people who write with their wrist above. They are left-handed people. When you do that, the user interface changes, and now you'll know that it's upside down, so that I won't hit the buttons by mistake with my hand that comes from the other side. And of course, this has to work in both orientations. Okay? That's another one. Let's see, we saw the pen precepts. Oh, people want to be able to, right to left. Oh, right to left. That would be something nice, wouldn't it? Okay, hold on a second. But no, they also like to change the color of the user interface, you know? Okay, you can do that if you wanted to change the color of the user interface, and now that the whole user interface has changed to the other, let's go back to the default. I like the default. Is that the default? I think so. Let's go back to my thing here. So now I'm writing in English. Now notice as I'm writing, text goes, I just continue writing and it automatically moves sidewards for you, which is kind of cool, right? Let's make a new blank page. Text as I write. That thing on the left that you see, if I tap in, it automatically moves it sidewards. Well, I can also say, let's switch direction to right to left, and now, let's see, that's my name in Hebrew. It works the other direction. There's some modifications, whether you're writing in Arabic or English or Hebrew. They're a little different in terms of how it handles certain things. One of the issues with English is that you have to be able to cross a T, and so I have to understand that this is the level of polish that people expect on applications. Now, what do they do with this app? Let's see, let's go to Safari. This is an example of one of my users. This is notes from a medical student. This is what she did with it. There's nothing like having a new version of your app go out. Everybody updates automatically, and then they find out it's not working. They say, I have to go to medical school tomorrow and take my notes. All my notes are in your app. Okay? This is an issue. Okay? So the issue is, first of all, we had the issue of building the app in the first place. So, which is a rich user interface, portrait and landscape, pop-ups, help, context help, zoom, shapes, PDF, writing on PDF. I can't do what you do in a normal browser. In a browser, you can just scroll everything and hope it all fits, or have the 27-inch monitor. You don't have that on a mobile device. So I had to support all these things. Worse yet, with thousands and thousands and thousands of users, thank God, at $5 a piece, I get $3.50. I can't afford to do much support. And people do email you for support and try to call you for support, etc. If I had just a few percent of the people who buy it asking me for support, I'd have no time to do anything. So you had to build an app that people could figure out on their own, or that they could figure out the problems on their own. And what you're seeing is the third iteration of the UI. There is another one that I haven't implemented because I joined Alpha, and then yet another one we'd want to do after that. Constantly iterating on the user interface with feedback from users, and as the people expect more and the system provides more. But what I did was I provide a training video or two. This is crucial in the case of doing mobile apps. People expect there to be a short, a few minute long or so, in my case I think it's about 10 minutes, training video that shows you how to use it, which throw up. It's done by videotaping the screen so you can see my finger, so you can see what's actually going on. That's been extremely helpful. I have very extensive help, and the website has FAQs and stuff like that. I had to have all that stuff, and the FAQs really are frequently asked questions. You know, I've really gotten that question 50 times, and that's why I had to put it up there, because I got tired of sending the emails back with it. But that's something that people expect, and you have to think in terms of that. So when it came to Alpha, the question is, can we get this polish with an HTML5 application? Can we get something that people can learn that could actually be in the App Store? Now you're lucky, in many cases, the applications that you're building, you can train somebody. You can get them for a few minutes and show it to them. That's a help. You can, you know, and you know what they're going to use it for, etc. But, you know, I decided to build something that I would actually put in the App Store. It's actually in the Android Google Play Store, and it's actually in the Apple App Store. And that was the app. How many have seen AlphaRef? How many? Okay, so most of you haven't seen AlphaRef. Oh, no. Okay, so AlphaRef, this is the AlphaRef reader, okay? AlphaRef reader was actually written not for the Bible, which you see here, but for business type of reference material. I was writing some reference material, which hopefully will see the light of day one of these days when I get around to finishing it, or somebody else gets to finish it for me. And I was saying that, you know, there aren't good ways on the tablet of being able to read reference material where you want to get back and forth to it, where you're going to it, frequently you're jumping through it. There's a lot of ways of reading on PDFs that are designed for next page, a lot of book, next page, next page, next page. But to be able to use it the way I would use an O'Reilly book with my Post-it notes inside of it, we didn't have something like that. So the challenge was to build something like that, and then to build it using Alpha Anywhere, and be able to use something that people could actually learn. So this, now I needed a corpus to work from. I didn't have my programmer's documentation done yet, so I needed something big to test with. So I got the King James Version of the Bible. It's a piece of literature that's well known. It's available copyright free everywhere in the world except the UK. And UK, the Crown still owns the copyright to the King James Version of the Bible. This is real. I get support. We do get emails from people in the UK saying, why can't I download it? It's not in the Play Store. So what I figured, there's a lot of books in the Bible, you know. And so we devised a user interface for that. You know, I can just go right there, tap on it, there we are. I can go scroll through it, go to the next book. So this is a traditional using drill down on data. Notice it's a multi-level data. And, well, you know, next I can go backwards and forwards with, I'm tapping the back and forward button in the upper left, so I can actually go through that. Okay, so it actually does have a history list. In fact, if I go up, I can see my recent history, and there's the recent history list. What I also have is, for every chapter, let's go back into here, go to the table of contents. For every chapter, I have a summary of that chapter. Now, I wasn't going to theologically, you know, write it. You know, if I can't write the summary for this, though for documentation you would. So I just automatically took the first sentence, the first the first part of every chapter and use that. So, which is good enough on the Bible. But it lets you go through and skim. Skimming is important. So I'm building the skimming, okay? And, but this takes a long time to get anywhere. So what we figured is this is the same problem we have with alpha when you have 10,000 records or 50,000 records in a database, and you want to be able to, go through them. So we came up with the slider, as you can see on the side. I'm now putting my finger on the slide and sliding up and down, and I can go directly to any one of those. In fact, it's fast, but if I move my finger in, away from the side of the screen, now it goes slow, and I can go chapter by chapter. This is a standard thing that is now available with the list control. As Selwyn said, the list control has gotten very powerful. Though it doesn't look like the one you're using probably because it's styled with CSS by a designer who designed the look for this. By the way, all of the icons you see here are icon fonts. My designer used Adobe Illustrator to draw some shapes that she liked and then output them as SVG. It's a save as SVG. And using Fontello, which Selwyn tells you about, created a font. And I just used the font, and no matter what the resolution is, they're all the right size, they look great, etc. And their color, you can color them, etc. Finally, let's go down here. This part, notice on the left, this is HTML. HTML is wonderful for producing whatever layouts you want of text. Native code on iOS is a pain in the neck to get stuff that looks like this. That's why even Apple uses web views to be able to produce text like this. When you're using the messaging app, you're using HTML on those. That's how they get those bubbles and stuff like that. That's how Mail does rich text. They're using a little web browser inside of a native application. It's a hybrid app. Apple has a lot of those. In this case, I actually have this so I can tap on it. And so when I tap, if I tap anywhere on the left side, it brings in the right side. And if I tap on a particular one here, it actually goes directly to it. So it's hot in different ways. This is a useful thing, the ability to tap on the form that you see on the left and having something on the right. Notice that this has, if I go back up, this is the licensing information, the specific license, part of it, multi-level, just like customer, invoice, line item. This is a type of thing that one want to have. And now you'd like to remember where this is. Oh, this is a good one I want to remember. So see that little plus with a little red bookmark type of thing. If I tap that, it'll actually make a bookmark, and the bookmark goes on a two-dimensional space that I can position it at. And these bookmarks, I can type in whatever I want on it. I can, let's see, when I tap on it, it takes you right there. Let's go edit, and let's cancel that. I want to choose this and edit the text and license information here. Okay. Oh, by the way, when I turn it sideways, it resizes correctly and does nice things. So this is an app. Oh, it has help. A nice simple little help inside. When it first comes up, the first time, it has a introductory help that shows you what the different icons do. This was all built using Alpha Anywhere. And there's all that information. A useful thing for me is for support, there's special commands, and using the special commands, I can actually get raw data, clear things, do things so that if I have a person on the phone, I have this inside of my my other app. When somebody's on the phone, they can do certain things so I can get information built into the app. I can have them get debugging information that I need. So what did I learn from AlphaRef? And by the way, once we built it for the iPad, which we did first, said, oh, it doesn't look too bad on the iPhone. However, on the iPhone, it doesn't fit as well. And we had to rearrange all sorts of things. Feeding back into the iPad version and change that, and turned out that was actually better. Went back and forth. and using the responsive design, the responsive layout feature. How many know about the responsive layout feature of Alpha Anywhere? Good. Using that, was able to make this work and actually run in all the different systems. The issues had to do with touch. The buttons had to be big enough. There had to be enough space for buttons. Things had to be in the right place. This ability to go to a particular part in the hierarchy of a list, sublist, sublist, was a real important part, and a lot of coding to get that right. If we go here and push search, and now I'll push the search button, okay? And let's search through the entire Bible for, this was, for any of you who know Selwyn, you know the first thing he asked, Richard, the first thing he asked me is dog. D-O-G. You'll notice that was searching the entire Bible for the word dog, okay? Or the letters D-O, or just the letter D. There are 157,000. JavaScript is fast, okay? This is just regular expressions going through a list of 1,500 chapters, 1,500 regular expression being hit in a loop. JavaScript can be extremely fast. You can switch it, let's say, let's just look for, Ecclesiastes, okay, what's it say in Ecclesiastes? It says, a living dog is better than a dead lion, okay, you know. Dogs are generally negative in the Bible, okay? And so, now you'll notice that all of the typing is in the upper right corner, because as Selwyn mentioned, when the keyboard comes up, the browser controls can mess up. They move things around on the screen if you don't have things up high enough. So a design problem was to make sure that all type-in was as up as possible. That's why when I was editing these, that type-in place is right near the top. And it's even more on the top if you're on an iPhone. If I could switch back to an iPhone, but I won't. So there were design issues, but you'll notice that we have an app. There are people who see this and say, oh, is this native? And no, it's not. It's 100% in alpha, wrapped in PhoneGap with no extra things in PhoneGap. There's nothing extra I did with PhoneGap. It doesn't use any of the native plugins. So what do we learn? We learned that designing for multiple groups of devices and orientations, etc., is a good thing to do in advance. You can't usually fit everything on the screen at once. So therefore, you're going to have to break things up into multiple screens or pieces of screens. You have to prioritize what goes on what screen. What is the priority? You don't want to have to always go down to the bottom, back, okay? So you have to, this design takes a lot of thinking. Luckily, you can learn from other applications of what people are used to. I also found out that by using a person who was used to designing mobile applications, even though she did not know Alpha, she did know how to write JavaScript. No, she didn't know how to do JavaScript. She didn't know how to do HTML and CSS. So she actually gave me the CSS, and I just copied the CSS and pasted it in. So if I wanted to know what colors to do, whatever, she sent me the CSS, and then you know how to do that in the style part, and I'll show you that in a bit. Take advantage of large screens. On large screens, you can fit a lot. You can put two things on the screen at once, as you saw over here. But design for the best use of the space and put button positions. Don't just fit as many things as you can. That's not a good design. Often a lot of white space is the right thing to do. So in this case, for example, the reason that you'll see that there's white space on the right is that I didn't want it to be that when you turn sideways, the word wrapping would change. So this way, it stays exactly the same position, which is useful for reading documentation. If you start with one device, like your iPhone, or your iPad, or your Android phone, or whatever, you'll find you need to rethink for others. So think about all of them and iterate the design. It's important to iterate the design. Think carefully about animation. Does it help? When should you use it and when not? In some of the apps I'll show you, it's instant switching, not sliding in and out. Don't slide in and out just for the hell of it. Slide in and out because you need to, because it's appropriate for maintaining a feeling of where you are or not. But sometimes, like for bringing up a keyboard, you may want to just bring it right up because they want to edit something. In terms of looking like physical things, you remember in the old days, the iPhone, everything was skeuomorphic. It will look like real leather and look like real. I started with that and it looked horrible, but my designer said, I hate that. We're going to go with something else. It turned out Apple said the same thing a few years later when they used to say they liked it and now they don't like it. However, you'll see that styles go in and out of style. And you have to sort of know what is popular and what isn't. However, you always be ready to iterate your design, which is why I like working in alpha, because you don't know how many times I got a new design. The designer said, oh, do it this way, do it that way. And I could iterate it quickly, often sharing screens in Skype while she was on the phone, while she was on Skype. And we'll make that a little bigger. She would play around perhaps in Illustrator or something and say, oh, make it this font size, or play in the browser in Firebug or something to say, oh, this is what I want. And I would put it right into alpha. It worked really well that way. So that's enough for those apps. How many have seen my offline app that was on the video that we sent? That with the whole thing about offline and all that, there was an app that we did. Did anybody not see it? A few people. I'll show it just a little bit then. If most of you saw it, then I can. Okay, let me switch to. Is this at all helpful? Oh, good. Huh. Can't tell. It's like, some of this is a motherhood and apple pie. At least if you're an app developer. Let's see, give it a while. Oh, does this know? Let me, no. Duplicate. Da-da-da-da. Here it comes. One, get to the other one. It's slow. There you go. Okay. So let me show you this. How many have seen Selwyn's offline demos and stuff? Okay, so you know about what offline can do. Well, we had problems. There were a lot of issues we had to solve with offline that are in the user interface area. We had to figure out, how do we show the state of data synchronization? In other words, how do we let you know what data hasn't been sent to the server, what's come back from the server, stuff like that. It was a challenge. Another was that there's the list of data that you're going to frequently list in CRUD operations. There's details about that list, and then, as we said, editors are helpful for actually editing it. Those three things. So the solution that we came up with is this. Can you see this, or should I zoom in? Well, let me zoom in on this part. I think I got zooming working better. Is this okay? Okay, so if we say UK, notice when I typed UK and then hit return, because I made sure that I look for the key for return and do the completing on it. You can do a little JavaScript can help with useful things. So over here on the left is your list of customers. That's a list. Over here is the detail view. In this case, the design was, we'll do it as a list, okay? But alpha lets you make every row in the list have its own HTML, its own CSS. So this lets you know this is the company, this is the ID, this is the company name, etc. And you can see the different parts here. And if I click on this, there's your company, well, actually, let me show this. I'm going to show this in live preview. I'll show you why in a second. Okay. customers, UK. The reason is that this used a font, an icon font. Again, I'm using an icon font, and I wanted to be able to show you. So here we have next, next. Notice it knows to jump over the word address, etc. This is type in, but if you get down, let's say, to UK, this is a list that you can choose from, and this is a telephone number for doing telephone numbers, a touchpad that's put together. This was a good design. We felt this was a useful design. The other thing is, let's make a change. Let's change this from 1212. We'll push backspace over here, and 1213, save. Now, this is turned green over here to say that it's been modified. We'll put it back over here. The fact that it has, as Selwyn shows in his demo, you can put little markers on. In this case, the marker is a green thing letting you know that this has been modified. Let's go over here, and let's type in something over here. This is also modified. So now I have two modified things. So let's look up here. Notice over here it says 0 errors, 0 unreads, and 2 edits. The thought was that we have in email, we're all used to email. In email, there's the concept of, unread, things that have come back from the server that you haven't seen. Flagging things such as errors, being able to see that. And also the fact that something hasn't been sent yet, that it's awaiting in the outbox. So we gave you that. So for example, if you want to say, now there are 2 edits. If you click on that, it actually takes you to, there's my edits, it takes you to the first one. Okay? And if I have a next previous here that actually goes through all of the edits, going to just the right place in the data. This is very similar to what happened in AlphaRef, where I had to go to a particular place in the table of contents all the way down and up. We have the same thing for errors. Errors show up as red, and unreads also the same way. So that's the user interface came up with. This interface was a pain in the neck to program, okay? Because I had to implement this entire section here of turning the data from the row into my form, which is a special list control that I had built with a lot of stuff in it, and make it know how to bring up some sort of an editor of some sort and having all these editors. But it works. Also, this app also uses the ability that's now in the system to do persistent data. It saves things in local storage so that if I go out and come back, it'll be in the same, let's see, what does it do here if I go back? Back to the same place that it was, okay? With the same data. So I implemented that. Now, AlphaRef also had that ability. In fact, AlphaRef gets you exactly to where you were before in terms of that. So this was a good learning experience. So let's see. So we got a data-driven detail view, custom icon fonts, a lot of custom CSS. The code for this is available on the Alpha site, and I have an hour video where I go through all the code. If you don't know JavaScript, you may not want to watch. If you are at all familiar with JavaScript, it's okay to watch. And if you really know JavaScript, you can modify it yourself, okay? But that's a problem. We don't want you to have to do that. Okay, one last app I want to show you. I had a problem, something I had to do. Let's take this off, take this off. I had my reunion for Harvard Business School. And at the reunion, they have this, for the whole class of 1979, we have a dinner, and the dinner still has several hundred people in it, And at the dinner, they often have a door prize. Turns out that the head of Gibson Guitar is a member of the class. A member, Meg Whitman is too, but she didn't show up. So we could have gotten, we all maybe with something else. But Gibson Guitar, they were giving away as a door prize a Gibson Les Paul guitar, $2,000 guitar, and some Cerwin Vegas speakers and all sorts of stuff. And they said, well, Dan, can you make something for doing that, for showing it, for doing the drawing? Because last time we used a big, with pieces of paper in it, and they got clumped up, and everybody was in Section A. And the person who was in charge wasn't in Section A and didn't have a chance. He said, I want to have a chance. Make it really real. So I said, okay, I'll make a mobile app. The problem was, here's a mobile app that I want everybody to be able to at the same time watch the drawing go on at the same time. At the time, I didn't know that we were going to have a screen. They weren't sure they were going to have a screen to project to. So I wanted people to be able to watch it. I said, okay, I want to be able to have an app. People can have it, but I don't want, in that room, if they all hit the server at the same time, that's not going to work. It could be, I'm going to have to provision just for that. What a mess. Maybe what I'll do is I'll make a static program that they can all download that doesn't hit my server. Ooh, we'll use app cache. And I don't want to install it because I'm not going to put it up on the App Store. I don't have time for that, etc. Plus, this is a private thing. So I'll just do it at a URL. Let's make an app that would be able to work in a browser on whatever phone anybody has or an iPad. Okay? And it has to work the first time. Ugh. Okay, so we designed a little app. Let's see. This is the app. Nice and simple. There's a list of, there's a home, practice, here are the different things we're giving out, okay? About this app, tells you how to use it. A link to alpha software. Hopefully they click on that, okay? If you tap on practice, there's your guitar, and for practice you type in a number. So I was going to read a number out to everybody, and they would type it in and they would see it. So if I put a number in, let's say like 6768, here it goes. And what section? We're broken up into sections. Yay! And everybody who's in section F goes yay, and and then it goes through all the people, and we see who wins. Who do you think wins? Yay, we just passed Alan, and there's me. Alan's the guy who designed the Ronco rotisserie. He's a designer who's also an MBA. So now I actually have better numbers that I would put in. I would call out numbers that you couldn't guess in advance, etc. That were checksum, so they typed the wrong number in, it would not do it, and did it with everybody. So now, how did I do this app? So this is a nice, simple little app. Okay. This is this is CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. The CSS came from, my designer gave me the CSS. She found it on the web, how to do spinning, and mocked up a thing with spinning. And I was able to take it and put it in and made a static application, which I'll show you how to do in a few minutes. I don't have to be connected to the internet to run this thing. Notice also it fits in all sorts of screens. It's responsive. It actually handles 4 different configurations of being, well, I can show you later about that. And it worked. I was able to do that, and it was another example of actually doing something that is responsive and that took advantage of the ability to have an app that can run disconnected without, even though it's a plain web application. In addition, I can upgrade it so that anybody who has downloaded before, I can publish a new version of it, and the next time they run it, it will say, there's a new version, tap here, and it will upgrade it. That's built into Alpha Anywhere already. Okay? Has anybody tried using that? No. You can do it. Okay? So, let me just show you the app for a second. What? Oh, it's not up? Oh, because I didn't do the magic P. Thank you very much. It pays to speak up. Okay, that's one. Oh, I hit extend. We don't want to do extend because then I won't be able to see what I'm doing, right? Duplicate. Okay. The fast one comes up. Yay. The slow one takes its time. Yay. Okay. So let's look at, let's see. What do we do? Do you want to see that app or you don't need to see that app? I'll show you what's in it in a minute, okay? So you don't really need the door prize. Well, there are some things that are of interest in it. One is, I wrote a separate app called, well, let me go to it. If I go to File, HBS 79, and Drawing 16 is what you saw. Here's the app. It's a really simple app. It has, you know, two panel cards that make up the two sides of the, we should show a live preview again. This is using images. It doesn't use a special font. These are actually images. It puts it side by side when you go like that. When you go here, notice that it's, these are in the center, but when it's vertical, they're not against each other. It's on top, etc. I'll show you how I did that in a bit. The properties, responsive, I have 4 rules: tall and landscape, short and landscape, tall and portrait, short and portrait. On the iPhone, when you're turned sideways, the top and bottom of the screen, you know, if you fill the whole screen, all the Chrome goes away. You don't see the next previous buttons. But if you happen to tap there, they show up again. And don't tell the app, and you can't get rid of them unless you have a scrolling app. What a problem. This is a problem for all web apps. But by having some space and designing appropriate for, I could take that into account. On the other hand, on other devices, let's say like on Android, you don't lose the stuff at the top. And that would make it too small. So I had to detect different size screens. This is the whole thing, an issue you have to do, but with Alpha, it was relatively easy to be able to handle those different situations where basically I say, if the screen orientation is this way, this goes left to right. If it's the other way over here, this goes top to bottom, okay? And the same thing about whether I use certain CSS. I'll show you in a minute about using CSS to be able to make things go different ways. Okay, the other thing is, if you don't know it already, okay, here's my CSS definitions. I just copied these from the designer and then made some from the one that she had, her mock-up that worked at HTML, and then added a few of my own. With
Responsive stuff, is that just CSS media queries?
no media queries. Okay, so that's a good question. There's a question about media queries. The way a lot of people do the responsive design is using a CSS feature called media query, which in CSS you can say, if the following conditions hold, then use this CSS. If they don't, use that CSS. It can only affect CSS that way pretty much. The problem is that if you're in Alpha Anywhere and you're running in preview mode, that doesn't work because that only knows about the window that you're in and you can't do the testing that you'd like to test. The other thing is you can't affect certain other things that you care about, like left to right, top to bottom and stuff. You have to do that through CSS, things that you would want to do through Alpha. So what we recommend is if you can use the Alpha stuff, use the Alpha way of doing it with the responsive layout, which I will show you in a minute, or I'm on again tomorrow for 45 minutes so I can finish whatever I haven't started from. But so a lot of what you'll get, now the thing is if you see a media query, if your designer gives you that, if they can explain what they're trying to do, you can do some of the same using these other techniques. And it's actually much more powerful to use the responsive layout feature in Alpha Anywhere. The other thing is that it has this. JavaScript linked files. it says in the head section, in the head section, put data.js. Okay? This is how I got my data in. I have a little JavaScript program that runs on my laptop, running Node on my laptop. It's just like I used to use Perl, but now once you learn JavaScript, it's really the one language to know. Going back and forth between Perl and JavaScript, which use different commenting in different ways, it's such a pain in the neck. So just staying in JavaScript was cool. I could just write a little JavaScript application, which is good for processing text. I took the list of everybody coming that was on the website and turned it into JSON. And JSON is really easy to learn, even for people who don't need to know any other JavaScript to speak of. JSON's an easy format. You can use whatever language you know. Someone would have done it in XBasic. If you're good at XBasic, there's no reason to do the JavaScript like I did JavaScript. I'm not that good at XBasic, so I use JavaScript. That's the whole thing. You can use what you're comfortable with. I converted it to this JSON file that has in it all the names. Let's see, I'll show you the data. Documents, dev, alpha workspaces, HBS 79, Okay, here's data.js. Let's open that up. Oh, it's one big, it should be word wrap. Basically it says, I have one big string. This is a big string. It wasn't even in JSON yet. Okay? Atom A, vertical bar. Section A, vertical bar. Carriage return. North B is in section A, carriage return, etc. That's it. That was my raw data that I worked from. But I needed to include it inside of Alpha Anywhere, so I just put that in and says include the JS file. Okay. But the thing is, the header thing says bring it in at the beginning, so I have it there. As someone said, you got to do JavaScripts in a certain order. Bring it in the header so I can actually process it when the system first comes up. And I go through that and I break it into pieces and then make a little data structure that has everybody's name in it and all the sections, and it was all interesting. And then of course there's the backspace, the home button in orange, the little home button, and the picture of the guitar also have to be included. Why do I include all these things? Because I went over here and said create static HTML. And when I did that, it writes them out and turns everything into static HTML ready to upload to a server, okay? Which is what I did. Oops. And it uploads all those files. And I'll show you that in a minute or next time when I come back. So that's that application. So now we're addressing all of these things that we were looking at. We had all these problems of responsive, making something responsive, making it have an app cache to be able to save it on and be persistent, or you can use PhoneGap to be persistent, for the program itself to be persistent. This thing of using an editor, of using the forms and the detail views and the lists and going from one place to another, we're addressing all of those things to make it easy. I had to code it with a lot of JavaScript to be able to do it. But what we've done is we've said, there's an idea here. We can have a type of form control that will produce whatever you want for the look of the form, that you can tap on, that can bring up editors, that can handle the data whatever way you want, etc. And I can build a Genie to build that in the first place. And I can have dialog boxes to be able to, I can have ways of being able to keep it up to date. But you can always dive in and play with it directly. That's where the templating comes in, etc. So in the 5 minutes, let's see, why don't I will show you the code Why don't I show you the code tomorrow? I wonder if I should take a few questions right now, since I only have 5 minutes. Any questions on what I've covered about the issues, some of the issues that you have in mobile and stuff? Yes? No, we're not giving a Les Paul away, and I did not win the one there, though somebody in Boston did win it. I don't know what we're giving away, but yes. Yes.
Question about functionality versus layout.
Yes.
I'm used to spending most of the time developing functionality. What I kind of heard between the lines there is that with all these different layouts, it sounds like you're spending a lot more time on
Yes,
the
the layout. You're spending a lot more time on the layout. Functionality is important. You can't do the layout without understanding the functionality. What I often do is I will build something that works. This is what's great about you can throw something together real quick in Alpha, show it works, and then show it to a designer who then says, here's my vision of how it would be. I'll tell you, my vision did not have unreads and didn't have that little box up there and look like that. That's what came back from her as some drawings, basically, and then came back as HTML, CSS, where I actually had it. And that's only version 1, by the way. We have version 2, and we're implementing version 2 of that as what you'll be able to get automatically in the system. What you saw, this is too simplistic, what I produced there. So yes, you have to, in mobile, you have to think about that, but it's worth it. I mean, that's why it's so hard for people to do mobile, and why it's so important to be able to iterate quickly, be able to make changes with what you've done, because if you had to do a lot of hand coding to do this, I'll tell you, when I worked with a designer on iOS directly, and it was like, can you make this little change? Sure, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And then I spent the rest of the day and the morning the next day implementing this minor little feature to be able to get the thing. And so it makes you have to think about what's important, what the essence of it is. You also, a big change that we've had is, is this. Apple has said, okay, it's no longer just 2 physical sizes. The number of, where we double it automatically for you in terms of pixels, we now have different. This is the 6, and then there's the 6 Plus. And we visual, so therefore, even Apple is saying now, whoa, you can't work the way you used to. It was really easy in the old days, because you only had, so much of the iPhone only works in portrait. Notice Apple didn't solve it for anything other than portrait. Even they didn't want to go to the trouble. But now we have to go to the trouble for some of that. What's nice is that we're going to be producing for you some designs that will automatically come out of a Genie, just like you build with your grid control. With the grid, you start with the grid, you push a few buttons, and you have an app that really works in many cases. We're working to be able to get, this was the vision that Selwyn had, is that, Dan, the thing that you're talking about, I want to be able to say, here's my table, here's my here's my link table to it, here are the fields I care about, this field is this type, this is this type, build me an app. And there's an app that runs and works disconnected, okay? And then you can go in and your designer can say, that's great, but our color scheme is not green, okay? And a little bit of CSS, and that's why we're talking about the Sass stuff, the CSS that is driven by variables, so that you can change, you can even use the stuff we have and just change a few variables and the colors change and stuff like that, or the sizes. So that's our vision where we're going, and we're really moving fast on this. That's why we're showing you this one and not next year, okay? Not in 6 months. We're working real fast to get that, and I will be able to show you, I'm going to show you the next design soon when I come back. I'll show you the next design, and I'll show you an implementation of the next design with real code that uses very little JavaScript code that is not part of the system. Anything else? Last question?
That's a huge paradigm shift for most developers who say an OK button always looks like this, and something on a Windows desktop is always...
Right. This thing of, no. Okay, let's step back a bit. This is the thing I forgot to say. You're working with corporations that have to be able, they're different than the App Store. App Store has to be perfect on each one, and on Android it has to look its Android way because the people will feel happy. In the corporation, you often have the thing of training is real important and very expensive. To produce training materials expensive. I don't want to have to redo all those videos that cost me a fortune. I bring a videographer in to do it and do, you know, nice stuff and write that. So therefore, I'm going to build it so that it is similar. It's the same on all the different platforms. It may not be, you know, it's because documentation is more important. I'm willing to go with a UI that might be a little more clunky because it works on all of them. This is a decision you get to make. Is the savings in a few seconds worth it? On the assembly line, yes. You know, but you might be able to say, you must use a Nexus 7, okay? In which case, you're only designing for one. But if you're saying, no, I have to run for all my customers, this was the issue I had with all of these senior executives from, you know, and all over the HP, you know, the people from Harvard Business School, I had to have it work. The most amazing thing was, one person stopped me and said, Dan, I'm here with my father, Jean-Michel, and I put in my birth year, 1992, and guess whose name came up? Jean-Michel's. So, you know, I mean, sometimes things work out just, but it worked. The program worked. So you have to decide when is it important to follow what they all say about mobile apps, and when you're only going to have 50 people using it. Maybe training is worthwhile. The programmer said, to touch this ear, you have to go like this. We'll learn. People learned how to text on old cell phones in their pockets. Do you know that? So, I mean, people will do that. So you have to weigh, this is the business decisions you have to make. Is this something from HR that nobody wants to use that you want them to use? You better make it comfortable for them and easy to learn, etc. Is this something that a salesman who is very motivated is going to use to be able to get their compensation, but you need to get it out immediately? You have a different decision. Does that, am I wrong on that? I hope not. Yeah, is somebody, yes? Oh. Yes.
On the alpha rep,
Yes.
obviously something I might be a little interested in.
Yes.
Because doing e-books is really difficult.
Oh yeah, it's, right. Well, Alpha Ref, I was going to make Alpha Ref available generally. In fact, the code is there if you want it, but it's not commented or anything yet like I did with the other. So I haven't put it out yet. But I decided it was more important to Alpha for me to be working on offline right now. I will go back at some point and try to make it generally available. So that it's designed, all you have to do is get your text, you convert your text into some JSON format, which is basically a list of, of each section and what the section is and whether it's a subsection or not. That's it, which you can write a program that will convert most anything. I was working on a conversion for O'Reilly to take one of their publications to be able to, I'm desperate to get a particular publication I like about CSS and get it into AlphaRef. And then you just put it in and it'll work. But
What is, the source is just plain text. I mean,
the original source
is
is,
it a Word document, is it a PDF document, what?
okay, it's the original that I had was a Word document that was plain text. And I put it through a Perl program. That this is before I realized that I got to get onto Node locally on my machine, and just broke it into sections. Whenever I saw a new section, I put there and I put the numbers in, and I think I may have marked it up by hand. The data that it produced, it produced JSON. I just went through and edited the JSON. The nice thing about JSON, just like XML, is that it's hand editable. It's human readable. It's worth learning JSON if you don't know it. There ain't much to it. Okay, JSON's one of the easiest things to learn. Okay, they're brackets, they're braces, they're commas, they're quotes, and they're backslashes. Pretty much, and colons. That's about it. Okay, once you learn that, and you learn how to be able to put data, if you're already used to thinking of data as either named fields or a list, you can do it. So you just have to get it in that format. Any other questions before? No, I'm over. I'm over time. Thank you very much. I'll be back tomorrow.